In the previous video, we already find that the empirical evidence does not support the statement that outsourcing is the primary job killer. Okay? We find that unemployment primarily depends upon the macroeconomic cycles. Okay? In other words, when we look at number of jobs we lost, we find that the vast majority of unemployment comes from the cyclical unemployment instead of the structural unemployment. Okay. Now, in this video, we're going to continue our discussion in the job killers. Okay, about the job killers. We're looking at what else could kill jobs other than business cycles. Remember, in the previous video when we discussed the types of unemployment, we said for structural unemployment there are two causes, at least two causes. One is outsourcing or international competition, right? The other is the change in technology. Okay. Now we've been heard, what happened in our manufacturing sector in the past decade or so. So in this video, we're going to narrowly focus on our manufacturing sector and trying to figure out what exactly happened in that sector or what else kills our manufacturing jobs. Okay. Now here, I would suggest you to pause the video and based upon all the information you have received up to this moment, okay, including what you received, what you learned in this course or beyond, okay, what would you think about the size of the manufacturing sector in the United States over the past few decades? Put it differently, would you believe that our manufacturing sector has been expanding or shrinking or more or less the same? Okay. Again, pause the video and think about it. All right. Now, let me guess. Probably for most of you, you would say that our manufacturing sector has been shrinking or probably about the same size, right? I would guess very few would like to say our manufacturing sector has been expanding. This is probably because, we heard so many times from politicians, from, these TV news and other sources of information saying that, our manufacturing sector is in trouble. Our American multinational firms moved their productions overseas, probably in Mexico, China, India, so that our manufacturing sector suffered a lot, right? Now let's check this out and see if that is true or not. Here, what we're showing you, you can find two curves in one straight line. Okay, let's look at the blue curves first. This might be a kind of the aha moment for some of you. Okay, so the blue curve shows the manufacturing share of real GDP. So that's our output, right? Manufacturing share means how much output the manufacturing sector produced as a share in our GDP. Now, as you can see here, the blue curve fluctuates ups and downs a little bit over time, but approximately it accounts for about 12 or 13% of our GDP. Okay, it's very stable. Okay, you cannot tell any upward or downward trend over these many decades. So we're showing you from 1960s all the way to recent years. Okay. In other words, the manufacturing sector is doing fine. Okay. it's doing at least okay. Because remember, when we look at the share, its share in GDP, we potentially compare it with all other industries in this country, right? Including the high-tech industries in California, in the financial and legal services in New York State, okay, or city. And so, these sectors or industries are high-skilled, high-profit. And the manufacturing sector can actually catch up with them, okay? It's not doing that poorly, okay? So it's pretty stable, okay? So this is the first thing. The second thing is probably more consistent with our common sense, okay? And that's the red or maroon curve here. It shows the manufacturing employment share. Again, how many workers employed by the manufacturing sector as a share of total employment in the United States. Okay, as you can see here, there's a pretty obvious downward trend. That's what the black straight line tells us, right? And go back to 1960s when we manufactured a lot of things for the rest of the world. We find that the manufacturer employment share was approximately 25%. In other words, 1 in 4 American workers was employed by manufacturing firms. Okay, but since then it continued to decline, and in recent years it becomes approximately 8%. In other words, 1 in every 12 American workers these days is hired by manufacturing firms. Okay, so when we focus on the employment share, it does decline a lot. Okay, and so here, putting these two curves together, what could be our conclusion? The manufacturing sector, its share in our GDP does not shrink. It continues to produce more and more. Remember, our real GDP grows approximately 3% every year, right? So that means our manufacturing sector is growing approximately the same pace. But the employment in that sector declined a lot. This simply tells us automation is another job killer. Okay, so the manufacturing firms use a lot of machinery equipment to replace labor so that they can produce efficiently. Okay, they can still survive in this advanced economy. Okay, now here I give you another real world example. This is one of the Amazon's warehouses. Okay, they had more than a dozen across this country. Okay, what you see here on the picture is just in one location, and this is one of the warehouses in that location. Okay, I believe they have 4 or 5 warehouses like this big in that location. Okay, you can find a lot of the shelves here. Okay, however, you can count the number of workers. Okay, on this picture, they wear orange jackets, so you can just count. Here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This guy is probably running 8 workers. Again, in this gigantic warehouse, only 8 workers are working over there. How could this be possible? Amazon has something they call the orange robot. Okay, I can probably show you this during our virtual meeting. Okay, and the orange robots is something like bigger than the like the iRobot, the vacuum cleaner. Many of our families or households have that, right, to clean the floor. But the orange robot is bigger than that. Okay, but it looks pretty much like the iRobot. And what the orange robots will do is they will automatically go to the shelf where the product is stocked. Okay, so they can find it, and then they will jack up the whole shelf and bring it to the front. Okay, and once they do that, bring it to the front, these orange jackets, the human workers will hand pick what a customer orders, okay, and then put into a box, okay. And so here again, this is another example to show you that unemployment is really a race between human beings and technological innovation. Unemployment is not a race between countries. It's a race between us and technologies we come up with. Okay. Now here I want to show you more numbers. Okay. These are from a research institution called Oxford Economics. Okay. The first chart tells us the cumulative job losses since 2000. Okay, because of the automation. All right. Now let's look at the United States. It's right here. Okay, and it says that cumulatively we lost about 250,000 jobs because of the automation. Okay, from the year 2000 to 2016. Okay, on this chart. And looking forward, we find that there could be approximately 20 million jobs replaced by robots, okay, by machinery equipment. Again, the estimation comes from the same research institution, okay, and 20 million globally, okay, not just in the United States. That accounts for 8.5% of the global workforce. So again, you can find that a significant portion of the jobs are gonna disappear, okay, for the human workers. Now, this causes a lot of fears, a lot of concerns global wide. Okay, so you can think about, what could happen. Okay, the same thing actually happened in our history before. You can recall, we talk about the spinning jenny and steam engine in chapter 2, right? During the Industrial Revolution, a lot of new machinery equipment tools were invented. And back then, people had the same concern we have today. Okay, so they were concerned that a lot of jobs are going to disappear in these factories or replaced by the machinery equipment. That was true. Okay, that was true. But we find that after Industrial Revolution, we actually created more jobs in other fields. Okay, different industries, different sectors. So overall, we did not really find the number of jobs shrunk a lot. Okay, it's actually increased a lot. All right. So again, here I want to leave this for you guys to think about in the future. Okay, the decades to come, where we can create more jobs, what type of jobs we can create